the craziest thing about that film is, so we had Franco, he drops out. We got Joaquin Phoenix attached. Did some rewrites then, and he dropped out, and then we got Jim Carrey, and then we had Will Ferrell, Kumail Nanjiani. The greatest was because it also got turned around and moved to Netflix. Keanu Reeves wanted to do it.
Wow. How was it watching the cast come together for Ricky Stanicky and the whole thing? Because I mean, you got some pretty big names in that film.
Oh yeah, well, and the craziest thing about that film is, so we had Franco, and then my agent told me Franco's going to CAA. And of course, the first thing they do when you go to big agency is they go, "Oh, these projects suck."
Yeah.
And we'll get you a bunch of other ones. It's like, yeah, but James Franco, you could have got a bunch of other ones. The agency's not doing anything. It's just perception. But of course, he drops out. So, 6 months later, they're like, we got Joaquin Phoenix attached. And I love Joaquin Phoenix, and it was great. My favorite Joaquin Phoenix story is that I went to um, it was Summit. Summit turned into Lionsgate. So I went to Summit to meet Joaquin and to get notes, see what he thought. And one of the producers goes, "You want to meet Joaquin?" I was like, "Yeah." Brings me over there. He's reading the trades, and he says, "Hey, this is Jeff. He wrote the script." And Joaquin goes, "Script?" And then he goes, "Yeah, the Ricky Stanicky." And he's like, "Ricky Stanicky?" And he's like, "Yeah, the script we're meeting on." And he just looks at me like this, and then he goes, "Oh, I'm fucking with you." So I'm like, I love that guy. It's so funny. But he's super cool. We have a meeting with him, and he gives me like one or two really good notes that were really easy to address, that were basically about the character. And I was like, "This is great. We're gonna go home and get this going." And then I got really my first notes that I ever got on the script, 5 pages of single space notes. When Franco was attached, all I would ever hear is, "Yeah, look, you want to shoot it in Atlanta?" And I go, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, goodbye." Um, so what you understand is, like, even though Joaquin Phoenix is an Oscar winner, the perception was that he was not a big enough comedy star. So the perception becomes, there's something wrong with your script because a bigger comedy star left.
Wow.
And yeah, and this is how it works. So like, did some rewrites then, and he dropped out, and then we got Jim Carrey, and Jim was on it, and then we got a director, Steve Odekirk, and then they ended up replacing him with Peter Farrelly.
Mhm.
And then that's when Peter Farrelly kind of took the script and he rewrote it with his guys. And then we had Will Ferrell, Kumail Nanjiani. Oh, the greatest was, it was that because it also got turned around and moved to Netflix. And it
Mhm.
was at Netflix, and Keanu Reeves wanted to do it.
Wow.
And oh my God, this is awesome, Keanu Reeves. And Netflix passed on Keanu Reeves, which is, it's like mind-boggling. And then they took it. One of the producers sent it to Cena's manager, and that guy was like, "Oh my God, this is great." And so, like, Pete Farrelly, to his credit, there's two really huge things that he did. One is not, one is just because of his reputation, but one is, if Pete gets involved in a project and he says he's going to do it, he'll do it. Like, there's a lot of directors, a lot of guys are like, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and then 2 years later they're just like, I'm not going to do it. But Pete, he commits. So he
Mhm.
was going to do it. He was going to get it done. And then also the fact that, like, Cena loves the part, loves the script, but he also wants to work with Pete Farrelly. And that's a huge value. Pete obviously has earned that because of
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
great stuff he's done in the past, but that's so valuable. You see it now even more so, where actors they just want to work with good directors.
Where did the name Ricky Stanicky come from?
Um, I think that there was a title that was a little bit similar, and I changed it. But the thing is, it just sounds like such a made up name, because
Yes, it
that
does.
right. And so, like, it's a crazy sounding name, but it was crazy, but it's still believable enough. In the original, actually, the scene's very close, from the original script that they did in the movie. Where the kids are like, "What's your mom's? What's your uncle's name? Ricky. Okay." You know, what street do you live on? And the guy's trying to say Stanley, and the
Mhm.
other guy goes Stanicky, and the other one wrote it down. They're like kids in a panic. So that was it. But it's sticky. It's a sticky type of name because sometimes I worry about movies. TV works a little bit better, but movies with names as the title,
Hmm.
like even the movie Dave, which I love,
Mhm.
like, wouldn't it be better if it told you what it was about?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I remember
Um,
that movie. It was a good movie actually,
Great movie, great movie. I,
but
I love that. So it's very rare, like I think, to have a first name or a name in a movie, unless it's like, Benjamin Franklin. Well, we know what
right.
that's, right.
Yeah, but Ricky Stanicky is much more impactful than Dave. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Because people immediately are like, what the fuck is that? Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny, or at least it gets your attention.